Welcome back. It's day 79 of this Growing a Kadota Fig cutting series. It's the third episode. So this one covers a lot more time. As you can see, days 71 through 175. There's been explosive growth. You can see there's new foliage everywhere. The leaves are relatively unblemished. They're waxy, they curl upwards, and they just look very healthy for the most part. And the growth is largely uninterrupted. It doesn't seem like this has any problem with mites or any other kinds of pests. It doesn't seem to have fungal problems. So a lot of the problems that my other fruit trees have, this one just doesn't have any of those. And I think that hole on that leaf in the lower left was just, that was one of the leaves in the beginning that had a hole in it. So I haven't noticed anything such as grasshoppers or katydids munching on this. There are some leaves that look like they're a little scruffed up, but for the most part, aside for some leaves that are maybe older and more towards the center of the pile, everything looks pretty healthy, as you can see from this bird's eye view. And it's well expanded beyond the borders of this pot. So it's a 5-gallon pot that's really well aerated at the bottom with coco coir. But at the same time, I don't really think it's 5 gallons of coco coir in there. I would estimate more like, let's say, 3.5 gallons is the actual volume. So it's day 93. You can see there's more growth. There's a little bit of white dusty stuff on there. Not too sure what that is. Otherwise than that, it's just more and more growth. And this thing keeps expanding outwards, and the branches are starting to sag a little bit. You can see this one in the bottom center. It's sort of resting on the lip of the pot, just like many of these others are as well. Not all of them yet, but I expect more of that to happen. Cuttings don't grow very upright compared to plants that are grown from seed, which just shoot straight up. So with cuttings, you have the advantage of having the same genetic material as the parent plant, and same epigenetics too, I guess. So you'll get the same exact kind of fruit, which is what we want in almost all cases. Otherwise, it's sort of a dice roll as to what you're going to get with genetic recombination. So you can see there are some leaves there that are dying or dead, shriveled up. I think the growth is just too crowded towards the center. There's no point in having all those tiny little leaves anyway. I don't think it's a matter of me watering and some of these just sitting on water for a few hours. I don't think that matters at all. So this plant is starting to use more and more water. In the beginning, I believe I got this at the end of April 2022. I didn't really need to water after this transplant because at the time I considered a 5-gallon pot to have a fairly large capacity, but I think this thing is it's using more and more water. It's not as bad as ice cream bean, which just uses an incredible amount of water, but this is getting a lot of foliage. It's getting a lot of traction, like the papaya to the right. It's starting to use up more. So it's day 107. You can still see everything looks very healthy. There are some more yellowed out leaves. The middle is starting to clear out more as these branches spread. And you can see little wisps of gossamer threads of spider silk here and there. This trunk is more woody almost all the way to the top. And this is, I think, the original main stem. So it's largely upright, but I don't know how long it can maintain that. I think if the lip of the pot was cut away, this stuff would sag a lot more because these branches are curled upwards, but they're sort of resting on the plastic rim. And you can see that's just an old leaf. So barring any pests or disease, I think maybe this could use a little bit more fertilizer, a little bit more nitrogen. And so far I've been doing my fertilization, as you've seen with my other series updates as of late, with my watering pail, which has a, let's see, a 7 liter about, or a 1.75 gallon capacity, and I've been dissolving a big scoop of Miracle-Gro all-purpose plant food in that, adding in 2 crushed vitamins, swirling a little bit, and then sharing that 1.75 gallons among like 6 different plants basically. So on day 117, I was very surprised to see that there are figs developing already. So this plant doesn't have flowers, not that I've seen. It just goes straight to the fruit, which is actually a modified form of flower, I believe. The biology behind this, the botany, is very complex. I used to know a lot more about this subject, and then I forgot over the years, and since I made that video about wasps and figs for a fig tree that I encountered in a local preserve that was being grown by some of the park rangers, I think. So this is a very interesting plant. Usually I'm used to seeing flower buds, and then we just kind of dawdle around there for a few weeks and see if anything comes out of that, and if the plant's not big enough, if conditions aren't right, if it's not the right season maybe, if there's just not enough photosynthetic energy available, then you just don't get fruits. So that can be a frustrating process, and you can go weeks or even months before you actually get the first fruit primordia. So this is a much quicker process. So there were 3 on that stem that we just saw. Most of these stems are still growing pretty upright, but here's a 4th fig. So that's all I could find for now, and I believe this was the original main stem. So that's pretty exciting. At least we're going to get 4 figs, and I know they get much bigger than that based on the size of figs that we've seen in supermarkets and so on. So this should get, I don't know, that's like really tiny, but they should at least be more than an inch in diameter, I'm thinking. And then it's a matter of determining when they're ripe. And for Kadota figs, I did read that they stay green basically, which confuses the birds, and that's a great phenotype to trick the birds to not start pecking and eat all the fruit before I do. So it's day 126. And I was basically reading that the figs will get to a certain point in growth, and then the little stem that connects them will sort of like droop downwards. Not too sure on how much, but there should be a drop of honey on the bottom, which I assume is the pole that we're looking at right here, not like the true bottom of the way each fruit is oriented. So by drop of honey, I'm not sure that I'm just gonna lick the fruit and see if it's sweet and tastes like honey. I think it's just probably just more like sap actually, and just a sign that the fruit gives you that it's ready, ripe to be picked. And then you could just break it off and take it inside, wash them off and try them. So I can't wait to try some of these Kadota figs. I heard they're really good. And at the same time, I do know that it's going to require quite a bit of time. So this isn't something that might necessarily be ready in just 2 or 3 weeks. But as you can see here, this one is getting bigger. I would say it's not quite an inch in diameter yet. And on day 129, you can see these 3 others. They're getting to a decent size. They're still very upright. They're not sagging. There's no drop of honey. There's a little bit of a gossamer shine of spider webs. I always take fallen leaves and just brush all that stuff away. So this one looks a little, I don't know, it looks a little broken at the bottom, but yeah, there's, yeah, I just don't have any experience. Maybe it's not broken, maybe it just looks like that to begin with. But compared to these, yeah, it's hard to know. It's day 154. The growth of the plant seems to have plateaued. But there are more figs in development, so maybe those original 4 are close to being ready. I'm not too sure. At some point, if I have enough of these, I could basically sack 1 or 2 of them, the original 4, and just pick them off and see if they're ready. Chop them open and give you a look for what's on the inside. I'm still waiting for that drop of honey to appear on the bottom. But in the meantime, since growth has plateaued for 3 of my biggest plants, I've decided on day 175 to do another transplant. You can see the other figs that developed on the main stem are developing a good bit of size as well. And there are some other figs down here. and not just on that one branch. So I'm not too sure as to when to pick those, but for the meantime, I'm going to be busy with this transplant. So that's the old pot. It was fairly easy to get the root ball out. I figured all three of these plants, the papaya, and the ice cream bean, all form very robust root balls. The branches can't support their own weight, and they're just sort of all sagging without the pot to hold them up. But it's not too bad to the point where they're touching the ground right here. But as you can see, the root ball has a little bit of new root growth on the bottom there for the two white tips. This plant grew a lot faster and didn't have any problems compared to the other two cutting series that I started at the time. So it makes sense that the root ball is completely saturated in this pot and there's no more growth really possible. That's why you don't see a lot of new white root tips. So this transplant into about 3x the volume of coco coir should change everything and allow for a big harvest.